All right, we're back with another episode of Unguarded. This season, we're kicking off with Trevor Huffman, the OG himself. We going back down memory lane, of course, again, just talking about the transition, talking about entrepreneurship and how that can be one of the ways you go after playing. But first, Trevor, I want to just start it off with you played 14 years. There goes the reggaeton in the radio in the background. This time is just the
The
roots.
life of an overseas
Yes,
athlete.
yes, you can't even multitask or do anything for business because it's reckless. All right, we're back. We're back. 14 years you played, correct? Overseas.
Yes,
Well,
I
in
played.
general, your whole career.
Yeah, I played 13 years, and then I coached in Belgium for 1 year in the top league in Belgium. So I say 14 overseas, 14 years over there was
Yeah,
enough for me.
yeah, yeah. That's a pretty long time. You got a badge for that one,
I
making it
earned
that
my
long.
stripes, as they say.
Yes, you definitely did. Um, Out of those 14, what was the highlight of the 14 for you? I guess let's start it off on a good note. What was the highlight for you of the 14 years abroad?
Man, that's a really good question. I feel like there's so many highs and lows, as you get overseas, especially going in, as like a 22-year-old out of Kent State. I was coming off the high of an Elite Eight, that feeling of invincibility was uh very quickly taken away from me as I got into the BBL, the German league, first division, as we lost our first 8 games. And I just remember being like, I don't think I'm good enough to play over here. I don't know if I belong. You go from like, I'm the man in college basketball. In my head, I'm felt like I should have played in the NBA. That was my dream. And I was still trying to do that. Fast forward to the German league, I sucked. I couldn't pass for shit. Can I swear?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
all right, all right.
unguarded. It's
I
called
didn't know.
unguarded.
Then goddamn right. So it was like that high coming from college and then realizing really quickly that I had a lot of work to do and a lot of development to do. And not only that, assimilating the culture, the people. And looking back, I think really the highlight of that first year was just making it to the end of the season. I was like getting on that plane home was definitely a highlight for me, getting back to the States, that feeling when you're an overseas athlete, you're just like, oh, I want to be home so bad. I'm gonna get a Starbucks. I'm gonna get a Mountain Dew or something. All the stuff you miss, all those little
Right.
things. A shelf not in the toilet. Like, why did
Yeah.
they crap into? Why did they crap into shelf toilets? Like, what's that
Yeah,
about?
right. Everything
So
is new.
yeah, it's just super weird. So that was probably a highlight. And then fast forward, I wasn't until the end of my career. I would say I won an MVP in Belgium, but that wasn't a highlight as much as winning a championship was. I think that's like the consummate goal. As you get older, you just want to win a chip or two or a cup championship or something. And I think your ego kind of diminishes as you get older in your career, and all you care about is winning. And I got to do that in France. In my last 3 years, we won a Pro B championship, moved up to A. We won a cup championship in Belgium, in Portugal. So I had like those highlights flavored in, which were just super fun because usually that means you're on a good team with good, just close teammates. All the teams I've ever won on always had like that family atmosphere on the team. And all the shittiest experiences have been where it's like, oh, the money is so great, but nobody really gives a shit about each other and we're just going to go do our job. So I always like struggled with that. Am I trying to make more money or am I trying to enjoy my life in Europe? And I realized as I got older, if you can find both, great. But the really beauty is just playing with people and teams of international cultures or different backgrounds and really having like that family atmosphere. That was always a highlight for me.
Yeah. No, it definitely is tough overseas because everyone's trying to make the money and get their stats to get the next check. But if you can find a good core of players that want to win and they put that above all the other things around the business, it's a great environment to be in. But it is very hard to find,
Yeah.
and it's a unique thing when it does happen. Um, outside of basketball, you said the first year, which we all kind of go through, it like, oh, they don't have this to eat. What is um my first year was in Israel, so the food was pretty good for me, but of course it was still a culture shock. But you say your first year, ready to go home, that was one of the highlights. So what made you continue to go back for
I mean, it's
14
yeah.
years, So what was it that kept you going back?
I
That's
I
the
didn't
question.
want to. I really didn't want to go back. I tried out for the Suns. I made the vet. I got through vets camp, and I was a free agent for a little bit. After that first year in Germany, I was just so happy being back in the States and having all the, cold tubs and hot tubs and massages and actual athletic trainer that knows how to tape my goddamn ankles. And, like all those protein bars and, all the elite
Everything you
nutrition,
can.
everything. I'm hanging out with Penny Hardaway and Stefan Marbury, and I'm practicing against some of the best players in the NBA every day. And then, boom, I get cut. And it's like, oh, do I want to go back? Should I go back? Should I play? Back then we had the CBA, we didn't have the G League. So I went back to Poland, took a pretty shitty job, in Ostrov, which was like a really small city in Poland. And my agent was just like, yeah, there's not a whole lot available. So you want $6,000 a month or not? And I was like, I guess. So I went
Right.
and took, like
If
they
that's my
were,
only option, like,
yeah, like I guess sure. And then so I went there, and it was like again a shitty experience for me. Like I was getting paid in a appliance shop, like through bar, like they'd hand me a manila envelope through the bars in the back of a shop. I was expected to like win be the MVP of the league. They had all these high expectations of me, but they had no weight room. The gym was freezing cold. I had to practice in like a full on like snowsuit basically just to stay warm. There was no real continuity in terms of, you get there 6 months in, so you're kind of like on the outside of the team. Luckily, I had a guy named Lewis Lofton, old American. As younger players will find, like those older American vets are like your lifeblood to being sane.
yeah.
And at that was like that was it. I came back from Poland. I gained 30 pounds. I was depressed. I didn't want to play basketball. I was ready to quit and just kind of give up on it. And then I played in the CBA for a season, and that kind of reinvigorated me. I lost a bunch of weight. I figured out like nutrition and how to
Hmm.
take care of my body on my own, because college, you have everybody looking out for you, and like, so it's really about evolving as an athlete, evolving as, uh, not only internally, but understanding your body better and understanding how to take care of yourself. So once I trimmed back down, I leaned down. I mean, I was at like 225 in Poland. Like I was
Yeah,
just eating, I
yeah,
was
that's
drinking
crazy.
vodka, like
Yeah.
just downing vodka and eating pierogies. And my
Yeah. I
stats went from
mean,
like,
yeah. Would you say, I mean, it's usually, you going through it. You're like
yeah, I
probably
was in
trying
it.
to battle depression, but you're still actively playing a sport. But it's
Yeah.
just those situations where it's just mentally challenging. I think we all go through that at some point in our career where you're just in a space where the energy is not good, the team is not good, the management is terrible, unprofessional, and you're trying to get through this situation. And usually it leads to just bad habits kind of coming up, either
Oh,
drinking or, you know, going out or
oh
doing
yeah.
other things that aren't really helpful. So would you say during that time it was definitely a level of just depression that you were just trying to push through?
I wasn't even aware of what mental health meant back then. I was 24, 25. And I think, in 2000, what was that 2005, 2006, like mental health wasn't really, it wasn't a term we used or threw around a lot. It was more like, fuck, figure your shit out. Like, what's wrong with you, And
Right.
I think, like, looking back, it was a lot of stressors, a lot of mental health is like, can you take care of yourself? Can you take care of your body? Can you take care of your mind in a stressful environment? And if you can't do that, then your mental health is going to deteriorate. And I think that happens at every level, collegiately, professionally. And I think you have to really look internally at yourself. So I think that was the beginning. Like I hit rock bottom, and that was good. looking back. Like it was really good that I did that, you know. I think you learn a lot more from those types of really hard external environments where they stress you out and you suck. Like you're saying, the vibe is bad, the energy is bad. You don't know what you're doing. You're at an existential crossroads, and I think it's important that athletes, you know, in general, or anything entrepreneurship, you come to these kind of uh, intersections of like what is meaningful and what keeps me healthy and sane and you know, happy. And I think that's,
Right.
you know, for me, what I figured out through that.
Yeah. No, the rock bottoms are good. I mean, again, there is
As
no
long as you get out
progress.
of them.
Yeah, yeah. There's no progress without the struggle. It's
Yeah.
beauty in the struggle, as they say. And it is cliche, but it's kind of like at a point you're like things are hard, but I guess as you get older, you're like, oh, things are hard, which means there's something I'm about to learn in this process that's going to lead me to success further down. But when you're younger, you don't really kind of
Yep.
notice that. So what would can you remember the exact moment when you were like, it's a wrap? Like it's time for me to get
In
out.
Poland.
It's a wrap, and like, yeah, what's the moment when you were like you knew it was over? And like kind of how did that feel? What was the conversation amongst yourself, like the two little
Yeah.
parts of you? How did that kind of come about?
But yeah, for sure it was when I got paid a fake check and I tried to cash it, you know, on my way out of Poland, and it was like, no, voided check, you know, so I just lost out on my last, you know, 2 months or month of salary, which I was just like, that was frustrating. And I was like, I'm done. I'm out. Peace, you know, and then
Yeah,
I think, but I think, you know, like going back home, being back around basketball players, being in Flint, Michigan, you know, training with other players, you realize like, oh, there's this huge gray area of talent out there. You know, there's guys in the NBA that I can play against. There's guys overseas that, you know, are making less than me. And there's this like huge spectrum, you know, bell curve of where are you, you know, and it doesn't really matter how talented you are on that bell curve. It matters like which direction you're going in. And sooner or later, someone's going to value you for, you know, what you do for your team or for the organization. So, you know, being in the CBA kind of brought me back to that. Like, wow, look at all these guys. I had 5 guys go on 10-day contracts, and we were you know, we won the Eastern Conference. I led the, you know, I was doing really well in terms of, you know, leading my team in assists and just facilitating wins. So then I kind of built that, I don't know, love of like, I really started to figure out that my best attribute as a player is helping other players, you know, putting them in the better position to do what they do best. And before that, my ego was like, I got to score. I got to
yeah,
do this. This is what I did in college. Like, you know, and it was all about me, me, me. And the moment I kind of shifted my internal awareness to like, really the best thing I do is like make other players better around me.
right. Yeah,
And then that changed how I approached the game. And it is funny how you attach things to, you know, a lot of players attach things to how they score and how they, you know, how many points they get, how, you know, how they shot. And now all of a sudden my attachment wasn't to that. It was just attachment to, did I help my teammates win the
right.
game, play
Did I get
better?
the
And
shooter the ball when they
yeah,
needed it? Did I not feed my big man enough and they
yeah.
were out of rhythm? It's like changing your perspective. I think so. On that point, I mean, ego is a big topic, I think, in general with athletes of why the system can do what it does to athletes also, because it's truthfully back on our ego. It
Mm-hmm.
feeds the ego where we're not thinking clearly. Do you think, like, how did you realize the ego was kind of getting in between you really transitioning into the best piece you could be for
Mm-hmm.
different teams now that maybe there was another guy that was just flat out better scorer. Someone else needed the ball in those situations. Like, how did you approach dealing with the ego and really being truthful with yourself during that transition of now becoming more a facilitator
Mm-hmm.
and a leader in a different light?
Yeah, I think that I've always been kind of a introspective player. You know, you know, even in college, I was not recruited. I didn't have any Division I scholarships, and I always looked at like, well, what's wrong with me? You know, why can't all my friends are getting scholarships and I can't get any D1 looks. And, there's a part of me that just said, screw it. Like I'm on my own path here and I'm going to figure it out. And I think as I got older, I realized that my path, probably wasn't the NBA. First of all, my ego's attachment to like, what wasn't happening really caused a lot of suffering. So, being in the Euro League, playing in the NBA, getting paid $100,000 a year, like having, I was attached to all these like things in my head that, weren't helping me. They weren't serving me. They weren't making me a better player. I wasn't winning, so who cares? So I think that CBA experience kind of taught me like, you know, stop being attached to things that, aren't real, aren't, it's not truly what is happening in the moment. What's happening in the moment is you are on a team, you can help your team win, you can develop as a player, you can try to get 15 assists a game, or you can try to shoot, 5 for 20. Like, what do you want to
Right.
be? Like it's great if you shoot great, but like if you help your team win and you're an unselfish player and I was kind of growing in my terms of understanding how offenses flow, getting
Hmm.
ball movement, creating opportunities for my shooters and players around me. Like that is an infinite game.
Yeah.
Scoring is a finite game. You're only going to get so much shots. You're only going to get, so many looks. And in
Right.
fact, it doesn't, it's a harder, you have to be really, really good at scoring. And I think as a point guard specifically, I felt like my attachment to how I viewed the game changed. And also, I just didn't care. My ego, I wanted to win. And I also wanted to enjoy playing with my teammates. And I knew if I could make them happy, it was going to be a fun experience. Like if they're getting the ball where they need it,
Right.
and I played with like some Olympiacos players, some guys that were young in their career. And I felt like they were so talented. And, my job was to get them in good
Hmm.
spots and be unselfish and set them up.
Right. Definitely. So after the CBA experience, let's talk about when you officially transitioned and said, okay, this is it. What made you make that decision? And then how did you approach not having to go to practice or not having
Mm.
anything to do with basketball anymore? Like, how did that transition begin for you?
Not well. I think the hardest transition that any athlete will go through is the transition to retirement, because I don't think any athlete, one, is, you might think you're ready for it mentally or physically, like, oh, my body's breaking down. I mean, at that point, I was 35. I'd won a championship. I was in the south of France. I'm thinking, this is pretty nice, like I'm living the life. I don't even care. Like if I'm in practice, I'm just having fun, like at that point, it was just like a lifestyle. I'd been over there for so long. And I think if you make it through those first few years and then you get to the last few years, it's the same type of suffering on both ends. Like, oh, I can't do this on the front end. But then on the back end, now you're used to the European lifestyle. You love the culture. You love the different, you're like an exotic person over there. People talk to you
Yeah.
like, why are you here? I'm like a short white guy. And people are like, oh, you're a pro basketball player. Like everybody wants to talk to you. And, going out was fun. And, so now you're releasing that part of your ego, which you're attached to the identity as a professional athlete.
Right.
And I think going back home, that first few months, you're like, oh, this is great. I'm seeing all my friends and I'm hanging out. And then like, August, September comes and you're like blinking, like you can smell, you like miss the ball in your hand. You can smell pop. I don't know. You just like all those noises and you should be in the weight room, but you're just sitting at home watching Netflix. You're like, you've binged on another season of, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, now what? And I think now the suffering starts on again. Your ego has been attached to your old identity as a basketball player and what that feels like. And oh, I miss the culture of Europe. I actually miss the shitter now with the shelf underneath me and like the two buttons I can push that don't make any sense. Like there's like all these things that now you miss.
Right.
I miss my friends. I miss my teammates. There's no camaraderie. There's no energy output, where I can use
Mhm.
my body in a way that like I have all this pent up energy. What do I do with it? Do I fucking go work for a startup? Do I go corporate? I'm gonna have to start all over again. Like all my friends have jobs. Nobody will hire me in the coaching world. Like it's all, all these like
It's
existential
loud. It's
questions,
very loud in the head. Yeah.
super loud. And I think it's even harder because you can't point your mind in a direction that doesn't exist, and I think that's the whole thing. Where do you go? Where do you point? Oh yeah, I want to point my mind in a positive direction. In what way? Now, you're either trapped by your sport in terms of like I have to go be a coach, or you're going to start over in something you've never done before. In terms of like, or maybe you have a hookup with like an insurance job from your teammate, or like you have your network out there and you could, but again, you're going to have to be starting over in terms of like I'm going to work in a profession or industry I've never done and I probably don't really care all that much about.
Yeah.
So
Definitely starting all over. Or you, like you said, the most common is I just go be a coach
yeah.
because they're the only ones in your network truthfully saying you want to come coach. Like if there's
Yeah.
a job out there, most 9 times out of 10 for us, you always have a coach that knew you in college and is like, hey, you want to come join my staff? Those are the job opportunities that I think all of us kind of get. Um, so you obviously the noise, I can definitely
Mm-hmm.
relate. Obviously, I chose to build a sport tech startup, so
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
just kind of threw myself off the cliff there. Like, all right, we're gonna go this route.
Smart.
Um,
Just get right into it. Don't wait for that suffering to catch it.
yeah. So, but for you, let's talk about once you did say, okay, and you're listening to all the noises. What was the response to
Man,
go down the path of figuring it all out?
mental health breakdown was my path. Just like severe anxiety, panic attacks for like 4 to 6 months. I say those first four, like once it hit me that I wasn't playing anymore, and I had like made up a logical decision, even though my soul, I think, still wanted to play basketball. My identity was so attached to it. So I think that it was just like really that first 4 months. Thank God for my family and friends, the support systems, that I had, and I had kind of nourished throughout my playing days, coming home and going to see all my friends and people. And I have a pretty robust um, support network, which I'm really grateful for, because I think, man, if I'd have been alone on that and I just burned all my bridges and I came home to just being isolated, and I would have, I don't know what, who knows what would have happened. I think I would have been shit. I probably wouldn't exist. Like I think that truly. So
Yeah.
I think that also taught me like what's the point of this human experience. I really got to another existential place. Like, who am I helping every day? I'm not helping anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I tried to do a startup in New York. I moved out there. It was supposed to be helping kids and after school programs, and I just did it for 7 8 months, and I just couldn't make New York City home. Didn't feel like home. I'm from northern Michigan, small town. Like I'm pretty, used to wide open spaces. So that was brutal. Nuts to butts with people on a commuter train every day. I just
Yeah.
wasn't made for that. And so at that point I just said, hey, my buddy Paul and his wife April, I was like, you guys want to go sailing? Do you want to do an adventure? Like I want to get, I want to get out. I want to try something new with my life. So at that point, we agreed to buy a sailboat and go sailing in the Caribbean off of Guatemala to Mexico for like 6 months. And I didn't know shit about sailing, but it was like my opportunity to just be self-reliant again, and just
Mm-hmm.
who cares what the rest of society is doing? Like all my friends are working, they're, everybody's making money and now at home, and I'm at the bottom of this ladder. And I'm like, I'm not going to partake in this hierarchy of status and capitalism. I just felt like F it, I'm out.
Right.
I'm gonna go live my best life, and I'm gonna go try to figure out what's next for me. And so that's what I did. I just learned how to sail, and we sailed 400 miles around the Caribbean. I didn't die. I
Thankfully.
all my anxiety and depression vanished. It was
Yeah.
just like I was part of nature. I was kind of tapped into this.
Mm-hmm.
I was tapped into a completely different experience, which was I wasn't getting like bombarded by what society wanted from me. I was just in it. I was
Free.
watching
Yeah.
this. Yeah, it was completely free, and the cost of living was so cheap. It costs $800 a month to keep our sailboat at this marina. We were in Isla Mujeres, which is an island. There's people coming in. There's international people. So I had this beautiful experience. I'm playing sand volleyball. I lost, like, I was in better shape in Mexico, like
Yeah.
playing, living on a sailboat than I was as like a pro athlete. It was crazy. I was running 34 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes a day playing volleyball,
Yeah.
just doing it, yoga, super healthy lifestyle. And I was just like, I could probably do this for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Like, and I was right, just I started writing a lot, journaling a lot, and that kind of self-discovery, I think, looking internally, it just, also kind of set me up for the next thing in life, which, was Swish House. I came back in June, and I met Jonathan Dews, who was had a startup in Chicago, which was basically, we're trying to start getting basketball lovers in shape, getting them
Hmm.
fit through the game of basketball as a byproduct of skill training and sport performance. You really do get in good shape, and it's a lot more fun than running on a treadmill or doing CrossFit or stuff you hate. So that's when we decided to go into that. That's when I was like, I'm gonna focus on this too. I think this would be a fun project. And I really looked at my life as like a series of projects from that point on, and that one being a huge one.
Hmm.
But yeah, but the sailing trip really was the internal awakening, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
Do
Was
you
like,
think, because I feel for myself, I've done many solo trips throughout my career abroad. Went to
mm-hmm,
Morocco by myself, similar, went to the desert, just myself in a tent, couple
mm-hmm.
nights, went surfing, and again, that solo trip of just
Wait, where was that?
I was in Morocco. So I
You could
went to
surf in
Agafay.
Morocco
So yeah, so Morocco, you have
on the north
Agadir,
side, right?
yeah, on the coast. It's
Uh-huh.
good waves. And then I took a car and went to the desert, Agafay Desert, spent some nights there. Um, and I think there was an element of, like, again, that self-discovery of doing solo trips. I know some players overseas are pretty scared and stuff, but I guess those solo trips are kind of that same, not the same as 6 months of sailing, but do you think you could have tapped into that self-discovery earlier throughout those 14 years, or you think you just wasn't aware you needed that kind of rock bottom feeling to get you to push you into the whole trip of, like, I need to get away?
Um, I think it's a really good question. I mean, if I could go back in time, I would love to have done more, um, inverting my life. One common practice of stoicism is like invert your life from whatever it is now and then completely invert it. So if you're a basketball player now, flip it. I'm not a basketball player. I'm not in Europe. I have no money. Like when I was a basketball player, I was making really good money. I was making six figures for 10 years, so I had money. I had this beautiful lifestyle. I would go home and I'd be with friends. I'd take people out to eat. I was like a minor scale. I was like trying to be like an NBA player. In my head, I was like, this is awesome. I wanted to get the fancy cars. I wanted to be just, it was just a status thing. And so like now I wish I could invert my life back then and say, okay, but who are you without basketball? Who are you without money? Who are you without status? Who are you without that title? And I think it's really hard because, typically youth, you know, is you might be smart, but the difference between intelligence and wisdom is you're applying knowledge to make your life better and more meaningful, as opposed to like, I'm smart, I have a ton of money, and I'm just living my best life, blowing money,
Right.
doing drugs, drinking, whatever. The difference is like what's truly meaningful, and I think that I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self like, hey man, it's a good practice to invert your life today, or go on a solo trip by yourself and think about who you're going to be next without basketball or without money. If you had to start over at zero, what would you do? And I think it's a really good exercise. But alas, I had to suffer I had to suffer. I mean, I went to the Caribbean, but that was like a really hard choice for me because I
Hmm.
had to I had to release my I had to release my attachment to what I thought society wanted from me, what I thought
Right.
my friends and peers and parents and business friend, like I had to release all that, which was like inverting my life in a way, because now all of a sudden I was free. I was
Right.
free to be whoever I wanted. And I think that's when you can really make some meaningful progress, whether it's in work or hobbies or rediscovering yourself. I mean, it's a tough one because like a lot of athletes that are they're in that egotistical state, which also makes
Mhm.
them really good at their sport. Like, I'm not going to let somebody beat me. I'm going to work harder than you. I'm going to do this because this is what I got to do to win. But when that ego, when basketball ends, it's kind of like, well, what, that ego is not serving me now. I have to go
Yeah.
explore. I have to go change and evolve. And I think it's like a complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah. No, I think that's a wonderfully put.
Well, thank you.
I also think like losing that ego is also a part of like it's hard. I mean, I've never noticed the more it's like detaching from the game and like discovering like I'm Jory. Yes, I play basketball, but I'm
Yeah.
so much more. It kind of hurts. I've noticed that it's like I gotta like get some energy up to be like, okay, let me pull that little monster out and be like, no, you're not about to get me because you start to be like, what do I have to prove to you? Like I'm playing the game, you know?
Yeah.
But that ego was needed, I think, to really be your best, which is kind of unhealthy, borderline unhealthy. I guess it's finding other ways to be motivated, to be your best. But I think that is a great example of just completely shifting everything from where you are now and doing a 360. Definitely a good concept for some athlete retreats. We got to make that happen. Like, hey,
Mm.
come, let's do this
I
retreat. We're gonna do a 360. Whoever's
yeah.
down to come discover who they are, let's do it. And I
I
think
would have signed up that I would have signed up for that retreat when I got done playing ASAP, or like even when I was in it, as I was as you transition towards the end of your career, I think a lot of athletes are just oblivious to that, how what that transition means. And I think like, if I always hear people say like the business of helping athletes transition better is a business that hasn't been. I don't know who's out there doing it other than like sports psychologists and people in the therapy realm. But I've hired, people, I've had therapists talk to me about, hey, will you help a pro, athlete kind of transition? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can help.
yeah.
Because, you know, I,
Yeah, you
I
did it.
feel, yeah,
Yeah.
I,
And
I
they're
did it.
they're
And it's a continuing education, and it's
yeah.
not, I think that's part of it, is like letting go, like you said, letting go of that ego attachment to, this is why I'm good at basketball. This is why I'm good at my sport. Me, to now, like, who, what am I doing? I'm floating in the universe, somebody kicked me off my space shuttle, and I'm just like looking around like, this is a big universe. This is a big world. We can choose anything we want.
Hmm.
Why am I? Why would I go back into something that I'm not really curious about, passionate about? Who am I helping? Like all those questions. Like, if it's always about you, then you're going to be missing out on the other side of that. Like, well, then it's not really going to be meaningful because you're not helping anyone else. You
Right.
know, it's kind of like a selfish cause. If it's at the end of the day, you're only worried about helping yourself, you're going to miss out on, okay, well, I can't bring value to the world in meaningful ways because it's always about me. And I think that's like the closed mindset, fixed mindset for basketball players. They, not all of them. I mean, I'm sure there's enlightened basketball players out there, but I think having a retreat, or going places and really talking about what it is you're struggling with, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be culture, it could be what's my next move, it could be how do I make money, how do I save money,
Hmm.
all those questions. I think athletes, there's so much stress because we have a finite career, 35. Okay, $1 million isn't a ton of money even in the athletic world to survive on until you're 75. So no matter
Right.
what, if you're not investing well, and you're not thinking about how to create meaningful value in the next stage of your life, you're going to get lost and it's going to suck. And that's what
Right.
happened to me. And that's why I went sailing and rolled around in the sand.
Yeah. I think to your point about the transition, there are a lot of people now helping athletes transition. A lot of people helping athletes transition for wrong reasons. Misconceptions of the money they can potentially make for helping athletes transition. But Julie and I both, we just truly believe the transition is something that's more community based. I think there's a big opportunity for these trips for more holistic community things around, look, I'm lost. Like there is
Yeah.
no, oh, let's help you with your resume. No, that's not, I don't think that's a band-aid and like push you somewhere because you're still gonna ultimately hit that moment that you're gonna have to do the work. That's what I think is a big opportunity of how do we get to doing the work. I don't know if pushing a player to a corporate job is the answer. I think that leads to maybe more depression because some of those jobs that are being posted on these boards are not,
Yeah.
it doesn't fit, in my opinion, many athletes of where they could thrive and what they could be into and actually be enjoying it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of people coming in the athlete transition space, but I still don't see a lot of programs or things that really get it. And most times it's not being led by former players that have gone through it. So also you're missing a whole group of people that actually went through it and they know how it feels. So you went on the sailing trip, did some self-discovery, and then you came back. And was entrepreneurship ever really on your mind? I know um, you were always working with kids and doing camps, etc. But did you ever really think entrepreneurship and being starting your own business was going to be a thing? Or was it just kind of a natural transition once you came back to the States and started to think about what was next?
Yeah, I think it was um entrepreneurship was kind of like I always had this investing philosophy when I was playing that um even though I probably spent too lavishly, I always knew that like a good asset that's producing income, real estate, rentals, stocks, anything like that was where I wanted to put a majority of my money as a player. And so I started, I got up to 13 rental houses that I paid for in cash in Michigan. So I felt really like I didn't know what I was doing. When I first started, I had to form an LLC. Like what is that? Like I don't even know what's an article of, of incorporation, of organization. I didn't understand any of it and it was overwhelming. But I think it's kind of like basketball, when you really want to learn basketball, you have to invest in yourself and you have to really either spend money or time finding the people that are actually successful at what you want to be good at, whether it's basketball or real estate or business or entrepreneurship. So I was lucky in that sense to kind of be able to apply my get kind of almost like a mentoring group around me. And my dad was a businessman, a lawyer. A bunch of my friends who had just not played professionally were, in the financial, you know, advising areas, and they would just, no, just try to pick their brain and surround myself around smarter, more talented people than me, just like a point guard should do everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that type of early access to real estate and investing in passive income really taught me a lot because what's passive? There's no, like even if I had to fix toilets, I had calls about my boiler, I had this, I had that. Once you get up to 10 rentals, you're getting, I'm in Europe trying to like find a plumber, find an electrician, find this. I was like the hub of communication, and then they would deposit rent through, to my LLC account. So I was like, I learned a lot from doing that. And I realized like, is that really a business I want to be in? Because it's brutal, I don't want to evict people. I don't like fixing something up and then having somebody ruin it that, a year later, you're like, holy shit, I just painted this house. I just finished the floor. I had this.
Yeah.
So, I was
Thank
kind of like contracting out a lot of the work, but it also taught me, what do you, goes back to the sailing trip. Like there's millions of ways to apply yourself, and what really is what brings you joy, or what brings you meaning, or what are you curious about that you kind of, what industry or something, what interests you. Could be anything. So I think I like basketball. I think when I was done, I was burnt out with basketball. I didn't want to be around it.
Hmm.
I didn't want to coach. That's what I realized in New York City. And then when I got off the sailboat, I was like, it would be nice to help someone with my knowledge of basketball. Like, someone out there is probably like, it would be cool if I could get in shape or become a better athlete, or a kid that could, you know, is on a similar path to me when I was a kid, dreaming about college. So that's where I just, hooked up with Swish House co-founders Jonathan Dews and Dave Holtzmuller. I was actually at a basketball tournament. I wasn't supposed to play in, but I had gotten off the sailboat and I was there watching my younger brother, who still plays 3x3 FIBA. Shout out
Hmm.
to Princeton 3x3, and
Nice.
he won a gold medal at the World Cup in 2019. So he's still like active and playing, and so I'm still watching tape and like
Right.
asking him like, why'd you guys not switch that drop screen, like you guys had a chance, like I still argue with them about like, what are you guys trying to accomplish with your offense here? Like,
Yeah.
there's no ball movement or flow. And like, anyway, so I just have always gravitated towards basketball, kind of watching the game and like, but more on a development side. And so I just was like, that's probably a good, sign that I'm curious about how can I develop players, or anybody from youth to adult.
Hmm.
So that's how Swish House really started. It was this concept of like, one, there's millions of basketball lovers out there that they're either playing competitively or like going by themselves to shoot at a park. Like, the ups and ends of the spectrum. If you love basketball, but you can't play competitively, what are you doing? Well, you're probably just going to shoot by yourself, or like, I don't know, like work on your game, because you'll get hurt if you play anyway. So like,
Right.
Swish House is like right down the middle of that. We're like a team based fitness class where you have two teams, 2 to 4 teams, kind of running and shooting against each other. But there's actually no live play. There's no 5-on-5. There's no 1-on-1 as of right now, and it's really just about getting a great sweat. It's training for the game of basketball. So it kind of serves the competitive basketball players, because they're getting reps, they're getting curls, fades, flares. They're getting reps off the dribble. They're shooting under pressure, uh, stuff like that. And then it for the player that can't play competitively, they're getting their like team fix, where they're not shooting by themselves. Somebody's rebounding for them. They're shooting against themselves, or trying to make more shots, or and we kind of designed it with an NBA sports performance doctor, Trent Salo, who works with the Pistons, and he's like a physical therapist, dual PhD genius. Like, if you have any issues, like that's what I'm calling. I'm like, yo, my back hurts. And he's like, here's your protocol. You must do it.
We need to get him for the second opinion on week
Oh
off.
my,
We need a second opinion doctor to see if he's down
yeah,
to
he's
connect.
awesome. He's so he's and so he kind of divided, like, I was like, what if we're right down the middle, we're not competitive playing, and we're not like alone shooting at a hoop, like how can we actually make people healthier?
Hmm.
How can we make people happier through like the game, and healthier, like more functional? So he kind of created our sport performance lab, our injury prevention protocols, just stuff to help people lower back, their knees, their Achilles, all that stuff. Like, as you get
Right.
older as an athlete, you're like, oh shit, it's
Right. It
really
just comes out
important.
of nowhere. Like,
Yeah, you're
what?
like, I didn't realize, like, so you're constantly in this like prehab phase as you get
Hmm.
older. And even younger athletes should be in that prehab phase, where they're always already doing like the protocols for healthy back, knees, ankles. Where typically most of your injuries, career ending injuries, are happening, in those 3 areas, kind of
Right.
knees, back, and ankles or Achilles. But yeah, so that's kind of it. And Swish House started in Chicago. I moved there for 3 years. Didn't really like the city as much, but really the community of Swish House kept me just motivated and hungry to build my entrepreneurship. It was a startup. It was a new thing. I was constantly learning more about business and
Hmm.
marketing and sales and ad copy and follow ups and professionalism, in terms of like, how do you build a community? So I think we got up to 500 members in Chicago, and our revenue was doing really well. I made if that had been my franchise at Swish House, I would have been making more money as a Swish House franchise owner than I ever had in Europe.
Hmm.
So it like clicked. I'm like, oh my God, like I can empower and help teach, coach, train not only professional former athletes that are coming back from Europe, hopefully one day, but also this huge community of basketball lovers that are, kind of on that spectrum of either competitive or I want to shoot,
Right.
shoot at a rim by myself. So yeah, that's pretty much, it's really took us 3 years to kind of iterate on how the class works, because it's not like yoga where everybody comes in is doing the same position, or it's not like CrossFit
Right.
where you're like power clean, row, skier, plyo jump five
Yeah.
times 30 minutes. It's like I have I have an eighth grade level player and I have a former college player. They're way different skill levels, but how can I make this class fun for both of them and challenging enough for both of them? So that's what the iteration was like. And that's what we do in our training manual and our coaching certification is like, it's like yoga for basketball player, it's like a basketball certification, much like yoga. You just have to get so many reps of how to adapt the class on the fly, what fun drills work, low intensity versus high intensity, type shooting drills and dribbling drills and passing drills and conditioning drills, all the things you hated about like preseason, we kind of sneak
Right.
into like a 5 minute window.
Yeah.
You're like, I always like, I can't believe people are paying me for
Yeah, yeah, right.
this.
Exactly. Like,
But like
oh
you need
man.
it. We all need
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to run a 16, but
But you
actually
need to do it.
it's a
Yeah.
great way to stay in shape sometimes,
Yeah. I mean,
especially
it's
when you
like
yeah,
the Shaun T insanity workouts. It's like train like a pro.
yeah,
People are interested in training how we train. It's kind of like, do you really want to go through that? Because college workouts and some of those workouts are like, how did I get through it? But it's a great concept and it gives, I know another gym in New York that I went to, it was basically that same concept, a
mm-hmm,
former D1 athlete, basically doing training workouts,
yeah,
cardio, etc., as if you are an elite athlete. And people go crazy
yeah.
for it. They
I
they
mean,
love that they get to die. I mean, and it's better. You get with a group of people and you guys got to kind of going after it together the same way you did with your team. So it's definitely much better than going to the gym and just trying to figure out, okay, what routine I'm gonna do today. Hop on the
yeah,
treadmill. So
it's nothing worse than me trying to
yeah,
figure out my daily workout routine. And I
I
think
hate
that's
it.
the whole point of it. That's the value a fitness company brings, or a fitness community can bring. And I think for a lot of basketball athletes, transitioning into the fitness industry is really fun because it's more of like an altruistic thing. I mean, you think about heart health, diabetes. I don't know how many people you've lost. Like in my inner circle, teammates, I've already lost a few to heart health, college
Wow.
teammates. And it just like, it's frustrating and it's also like motivating because it's like, man, the sooner, we can get going on this and really get these in the pockets of the United States, maybe that's the way to keep people attached to the game, just enough to keep their heart healthy. I mean,
Yeah.
who cares about losing weight? Is your are you going to survive the next 5 years? Like
Yeah,
what
definitely.
track are you on? And I think
Yeah.
that motivates me too. In terms of just seeing you know my my teammate John Wharton passed away this year. Brandon Hunter played at Ohio University, played in the NBA. He just passed away in hot yoga class. Like heart health, um, physical health, fitness, all that stuff is super important.
Hmm.
And I think it's also meaningful work because as a former athlete, people look up to you, and
Right.
they look up to you as a coach, and they look up to you as like what you could do with your body. That's a skill. What you've done, what I've done, what any pro athlete's done, the ability to like push, be consistent, show up for yourself and your team, like over that 14 years or however long you've been doing it, from
12.
college.
Sneaking
12.
up
I
on
mean,
you.
it's like you understand how consistent you have to be. And I don't think that the recreational athlete, one, can like, they don't always understand how consistent and one, and then be like, how to modulate workouts and how to
Right.
listen to your body and how to, you know, just keep improving every month, every quarter, every year, and then keep stacking those days on top of each other, those months on top of each other, and that's how you become healthy. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a piece of broccoli that I can eat today. It's a, are you
Consistent.
gonna? It's about
Yeah,
consistency and all the domains.
definitely.
So
Well, it definitely seems that, I mean, first of all, I love the Swish House. I love the concept. Again, we've come across it a few times, Julie and I.
yeah,
Far as now being a full-blown entrepreneur, you have a family, you are now fully removed from the time as a player. Um, how do you feel uh, regarding the community of basketball players now? Like being a retired athlete, do you feel you would want to give more? Do you feel you still would love to just have a better camaraderie amongst other retired athletes that might be in the area? Um, do you still long for that community, or is it something that you think over time it kind of goes away, that longing to still want to be involved? Or is it just something you get used to because there really isn't a space for you to cultivate those relationships and maintain those relationships?
yeah. I think you just hit the nail on the head with that last statement. I mean, I feel like I've given up on finding that community, that that brotherhood, or even sisterhood of like, oh, you played college hoops or pro hoops at that, like there's just something about, you know it's like birds of a feather flock together. And I
Mhm.
think basketball players, that especially have played at elite levels, they understand. um I don't know, there's just like a something fun about being, around that type of energy. Basketball energy is unique.
Right.
It's expressive. It's robust. It's fun. There's typically a playful, and you can trash talk. You can be sarcastic. You can be
Right.
quiet. There's like, and so I do miss that community, and I think that was part of what I wanted with Switch House. But you still are missing like that top 1%
Hmm.
of people that are like just have gone through the same stuff as you. And I probably can't, say this. I mean, it's not fair to the military service people out there, but it's much like that, where you feel
Hmm.
that camaraderie of like, we went to war on the court together. We battled for each other. We got through injuries, like I think about all my teammates that, have been spread out now across the United States and the world. And it's just like, if there was a way to tap into, that in Raleigh where I just moved. I've only lived here for 4 months and I literally
Hmm.
have one friend. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know why it's so hard to make friends at 44. Like,
Yeah. Right.
it's probably the hardest thing in the world. I play pickleball now. I like talk to 65-year-olds every day about pickleball, like, oh, nice
Yeah.
drop shot. But I would really like to be talking about, the NBA versus FIBA, and how the FIBA style game is completely more fun to watch. Or
Right.
there's, it's way more, it's in the rest of the world is catching up with the NBA just because of, player development in the US. Like those are the conversations I would love to be having, but I can't because I don't have, like you're saying, I don't, how do I tap in? Where do I
Right.
tap in? Um, who, maybe I should just start showing up at the park, but I don't even play anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's
what
that
am I just gonna
disconnect as
watch you?
well. It's that disconnect
Yeah,
where now the certain generations they need a go down memory lane to know, like, oh yeah,
yeah,
he really did hoop. Oh, he was actually good. I think
yeah,
is that element as well where um, like with Wevolve, it's like, okay, maintain that profile within
yeah.
Wevolve. So when someone does find you, they can see, oh,
Hmm.
entrepreneur, he did XYZ, but then they can say, oh, but yes, he was legit. Like I can check his other part of his resume quickly because I know that's sometimes, you have a lot of people say, yeah, I played. And then you kind
Yeah,
of think like, did you really? Because they'll say it and be like, this dude, this she didn't play. Like, it's different.
Yeah.
It's different. There's levels to it, as they say. There's
No,
levels to it.
exactly.
But no, I think what we've learned through the process with Evolve is that, and research, of course, there are a number of people trying to start athlete communities, micro communities, just because they miss that camaraderie. The institutions, of course, our colleges didn't do a very good job, unless you want a championship. Like, Duke has good culture. All of their
Yeah.
like former players come back. They have a different
Hmm.
type of vibe. Some colleges have done a good job, but not all of them. So I think it
Yeah.
is something that we consistently hear that people want it, players want it. They want to find ways to even now if who are all the entrepreneurs in that space. So I think it is something that is unique and it's a big opportunity, and it's good to see different people in the space trying to make it happen, and hopefully it gives fruitful returns. Before we head out, one of the questions, just wanted to ask, I know we touched upon it, but for the players like myself, me and Julie, as you know, we are actively transition. We're in that limbo stage, but I know a lot of other players that are going through it. Some players that we know have just finished and they're going through it.
Yeah.
We talk about it. They've asked, we need a weight sessions, talk about that community. Weight sessions is that space where we would have digital community meetups and just talk. I mean, we would share our screen and show some funny stuff that was happening just to be and not
Hmm.
talk about basketball, but just talk about what's going on. What would be kind of your advice to those athletes that are kind of in that gray space of still playing, but they know the time is coming? What would be kind of your advice to them?
Yeah. Um, Definitely start with, enjoy it, enjoy every day as you kind of are getting to the end um, of the tunnel in terms of your career. I think I thought I did a pretty good job of that, just being grateful for being on the court on my last at least the winning season I had when we won the championship. I was thinking like, I don't know, after that season, I don't know how much longer I really need to play because I finally achieved that, finally big goal of winning a chip and national, national title was all I ever wanted, and I think that I had waited so long and it was like a big, big thing because there was only 2 to 3 Americans per team and I felt like a key part in that cog. But I really felt so grateful every day I was at the gym and I was just trying to be present and know like, man, this is it. Like this is kind of coming down to an end. And I think so that would probably be my first piece of advice is just be present and enjoy your, your every day, even if it's hard or even if you're hurt or even if, you're getting through, a bad season. You know, I wish I could go back and tell myself right before I retired, like, hey, you know, even if a coach is trying to ruin it for you or, you're losing and things aren't going well, you got hurt again, like, you're still, you still have today to make, you can still have fun today and enjoy it as much as you can, regardless of the circumstances around you. It's the stimuli of basketball can create a negative response, but you're always the last person that gets to choose your response in any
Right.
environment stimuli. So I think like if I could go back, I would say, hey, remember that because this is going to be a shitty, usually on the last month or two before it's really over, it's going to be this bad stimuli. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
a bad, negative, toxic environment. And so how do you kind of find those sweet spots and special moments, whether it's helping a younger player develop or getting shots up at the end of practice, or there's a lot of players that are looking up, haven't been in the game as long as you, and kind of what wisdom you can pass on to those younger players, and so that would be one. Um, and I think just going into that transition with a gentle heart. I think that ego is going to be really hard on players because they're so used to winning and they're so used to competing and they're so used to being the best. And then, you know, when you have to start over, I think that really that ego to drive and push and be the best is going to limit you in terms of what you're able to explore about your life and about yourself. And I think that goes back to our earlier conversation about looking kind of internally and being gentle with yourself and saying like, yeah, it's okay. Like if I want to go explore and go live on a sailboat, or I have money saved up and I want to take a 6 month hiatus to hike the Appalachian Trail or go do a solo trip, or start journaling every day to figure out like what am I curious about. I think that's really important because a lot of guys will feel under duress. A lot of players will feel under that like stress of not knowing, and that attachment to society like bombarding them with like, what are you gonna do? Like it's kind of like when you went to high school, like where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna go to school? Who are you gonna sign with?
Right.
It's the same now. Like society's bullshit continues because now everybody's gonna be like, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna make money? What's it, like,
Right. Do
and I
you have
think a
an
lot,
NIL deal?
yeah,
Are you
yeah,
going pro? Do you
yeah,
have a sponsorship deal with Nike or
yeah,
Adidas? Who you choosing? Like what?
yeah, yeah. I never had to worry about that. Thanks,
Yeah.
George. I
Me
was
either.
never that. I wasn't even good enough to have any of that. So that was like no worries for me there. All I had to do was get better. But like, yeah, I think that would be the two things. I've I really looked at like the mental health diminishing of in my transition was like it forced me kind of make a choice to like let go of everything and focus on myself in a different way, and I think that was good. But I think a lot of guys are probably just a lot of athletes are just tougher than me. Like I'm just sensitive anyway. So, I was like, man, I'm gonna go do some ayahuasca
Yeah.
and really, and fuck this. Like, what is happening to me? Like
Yeah.
I'm really for a fucking hero's dose of psilocybin right now, and I wanna understand who I am. And
Yeah.
that was what I did. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I went down that like uh, spiritual path towards
Right.
development, um, and using substances like psilocybin or other stuff to like open up my mind to all the possibilities that in the end we're all so powerful. We have this energy that we can put into the world, and kind of what direction do I want to point that. And I think that was what I would tell my younger self, like it's okay, dude. Like it's okay to be
Yeah.
completely lost and go on this journey and like
Right.
figure out what's really important to you, and where that love exists. Just like when we were kids, love was basketball. It was just like we loved the game so much, and then as we got older, all the layers of the onion got attached to
Yeah.
it, and in the end we're like, why are we even doing this?
Right.
you know
Like I used
but
to love this. What
yeah,
happened?
exactly. Can you find that, like, peel all the onions back again and find that next thing? I think it's that would be how I would approach that transition. And it's definitely, yeah, I think that's why we need community, like you're saying. We need old wise players that can help mentor younger players transition. We need that community of like, where can I find a good place to just hang out and chat and talk and dialogue? Can I dialogue about my life? Can I have this moment to express my frustrations? And maybe somebody will have good insight, just like an old coach would or an old teammate would. So it's really cool what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean I think everyone's saying they want it. So
Yeah,
that's the first thing. Now again, in business they say people say they want stuff all the time, but will they pay for it? That's
yeah,
another thing. But all in all, I know, I want it. I want to be able to go on retreats with a number of athletes and be able to sit and work through our stuff together collectively. Um, I know there's a place for individual psychologists and having someone that particularly especially works for you, but I do think there's power in community, and I think it's something that athletes we could naturally gravitate towards because we've gotten through things together our whole careers. Now
mm-hmm.
maybe not for tennis players or individual sport athletes, but for team sports, I think many times you've gone through your worst moments and front those people, and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe they picked you up and saw you at your best moments.
Right.
That's kind of therapeutic in a sense, and I think how do you bring that to other areas, not just on the court or when you're with one particular team, but how can we continue to cultivate this type of community and environment away from the game? But we'll see. But it's good to see so many former athletes doing great things, starting their own businesses and bringing a new light to the game, whether that be at the elite level or for just recreational. I think it's still a beautiful um, thing that we see
Mhm.
happening for the game. And basketball is just so unique. I say basketball kind of controls the culture of sport. You see people wearing Jordans. You don't see them wearing messy soccer's cleats and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe Coco now with the New Balance deal, you'll see people wearing Coco New Balance shoes around. But all in all, you usually see people wearing basketball stuff. Is kind of like a cultural leader in sport. So it's just exciting. But I do thank you, Trevor, for connecting with us, joining the podcast. Look forward to seeing you in the Weevolve community. So if some players hear this podcast and then they'll come and, hey, what about that Asawaga? How about that sailing trip? Like, can we go on a sailing trip with you?
Yeah. I'll send you guys my boat's address. It's still there,
So
waiting for
yeah,
basketball players to do some ayahuasca on.
yeah, we got to do a special trip. Get some players, about 10 or however many we can hold, and do a trip. But that's definitely in the pipeline. So um,
Well, I
look
look forward
forward
to
to it.
helping in any way I can. Thanks, George.
No, thank you. And just quickly, obviously, just quickly tell us where everyone can find more about you, your business, etc.
Yeah, so I'm currently in Raleigh. So if anybody's in the Raleigh area, please say hello. T Huffman 24 is my Instagram. That's pretty much the only thing I use. Or T Huffman 24 at Gmail if you want to email me anything. But yeah, Swish House Fit is our Swish House community, which is in Brooklyn, Chicago, and then I'm trying to open one down here in Raleigh. So for the Triangle area, getting that going. So that's kind of my next project down here. So yeah, so T Huffman 24 at Instagram. You can chat it up.
All right. Well, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be in
Thank
touch.
you.
All right.
See you, Joy.